According to a new report, the Tennessee Titans are one of the teams interested in trading for DeAndre Hopkins, but they shouldn't do it. And I'll explain why on today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. Let's get it.
You are Locked On Titans, your daily Tennessee Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Titans podcast. I am your host, Tyler Rowland. Titans fans, today's episode is all about saying no. No to a DeAndre Hopkins trade. No to signing Cam Newton. We're going to talk about all of that and more. Before we get into it, do want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by the Ultimate Football GM app. If you've ever dreamed of becoming an NFL general manager and making trades and signing players and running a football franchise, then this game is definitely for you. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or do the simple thing, look up the Ultimate Pro Football GM app in your app store. My listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when you use the promo code Locked On in all caps in the game. Want to thank you guys for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen every day. Remember, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content on all platforms all year round and always for free. Make sure that you get subscribed and stay subscribed to the Locked On Titans podcast for year-round content available everywhere. As I said yesterday, looking for a little bit of help from you guys. If you're watching the video right now, throw a thumbs up on the video. The content is for free. All I ask for in return is the press of a button. Also, if you do have the ability to do so, please go to the Apple Podcast app and give the show a 5-star review. Today, when you guys are listening to this, is my birthday. I'm 32 years old, and all I want from you guys for my birthday is a 5-star review on the Apple Podcast app. It helps out the show a tremendous amount. So not going to spend too much time going over all the housekeeping stuff. Just wanted to throw that out there. Thank you guys all so much for your support. But let's talk about DeAndre Hopkins, because a recent report from Benjamin Albright has the Titans as one of the teams interested in Hopkins. This is what Albright had to say in his recent report. Quote, "Teams, I'm told, are interested with the possible capital to pull off a trade for Hopkins include, but are not limited to, the New England Patriots, the New York Giants, the Tennessee Titans, and the Atlanta Falcons." Look, it makes all the sense in the world for the Titans to be interested in DeAndre Hopkins. The wide receiver room right now is a travesty. It's a disgrace, quite honestly. With Treylon Burks, I'm very excited about Burks. I think Burks could be a very good wide receiver in the NFL, but he did play only 11 games last year. I'm confident in his ability. I'm not confident in his health. You look at Kyle Phillips. Everybody was so excited about Kyle Phillips last year. He played in 4 games. He's a 5'11" slot receiver that was a 5th-round draft pick. That guy can't be one of your top 2 wide receiving options going into the season. Just can't be. And then, obviously, they brought back Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, but I've talked enough about that, as you guys know from last week. He's a 5th or 6th wide receiver on your team, not your number 3, or more than likely your number 2. If the Titans are in a 2 wide receiver set, they're going to have NWI and Burks out there as their top 2 guys. So the Titans just can't look at me in the face and tell me that they're serious about competing in 2023 to win games in 2023 with that current situation. So if the Titans do want to go out and compete in 2023, and they do want to try to get a final run out of Ryan Tannehill, out of Derrick Henry, out of Kevin Byard, all of that, then the DeAndre Hopkins trade is a move that they should be seriously considering. They should, because if you add DeAndre Hopkins into this wide receiver group, and then let's say, for example's sake, you take a wide receiver number 11 in the draft, input any wide receiver that you like, but for me personally, the top wide receiver in the draft is Jackson Smith-Njigba at this point. He also is a pure route runner who can play in the slot. So if you have Jackson Smith-Njigba in the slot, Burks and Hopkins on the outside with Derrick Henry in the backfield and an improved offensive line, that, my friends, is an offense. That's something that we can get excited about. That's something that can breed optimism. So do I think the Titans should make the trade for DeAndre Hopkins? My answer is going to be no, because I think it's a pipe dream for the Titans to think that they're going to contend for a Super Bowl in 2023. And honestly, the free agent signings that they've made have told us that they don't think it's realistic either, because they didn't go out there and actually get anybody who can be a certified upgrade at their position. Yeah, Andre Dillard is going to be an upgrade over Dennis Daly, but he's not an upgrade over a healthy Taylor Lewan. And the Titans gave him a 3-year deal worth $29 million, but there's only $10 million in guaranteed money. It's a 1-year deal worth $10 million. All the other deals on their face are obvious 1-year deals with little guaranteed money and little future penalty, financially speaking, going forward. So the Titans have taken a ton of low risk, little commitments in deals. So the Titans have said, we're going to try some guys out, but I don't know if any of these guys are really going to help us long term, which means they can't be certain that they're actually going for it in 2023. And I don't want to see the Titans take any more half steps or any more half measures. Don't commit any resources or any long-term money towards making the team a real contender if you don't think you're going to be, but don't go halfway. So to me, a DeAndre Hopkins deal would signal that they do want to compete in 2023, that they would be going for it, and then that would make some of the free agent moves a little confusing, in my opinion. So for me, you look at DeAndre Hopkins, a fantastic player, but here's the reality. He's played 10 games in 2021 with, I believe, a hamstring issue throughout the season. Played 9 games in 2022 because of a PED suspension. We saw what happened to Taylor Lewan when he finally got popped for steroids and he had to get off the PEDs. He wasn't able to stay healthy. So DeAndre Hopkins is going to be 31 this season. He's coming off 2 years where he didn't play more than 10 games. He hasn't been an All-Pro since 2019. I'm sorry, but the price would have to be very, very low. Very, very low compensation for me to consider the deal. Am I saying absolutely not? I'd never do it. I'd never consider it. No, it's all about the price. That's how life works. Everyone has their price. But for a second, third round pick, I just couldn't do that, considering what you would have to give up and how much you'd have to pay Hopkins and where the team is right now. But we're going to talk about that more here in just a moment. I want to dive into what trade compensation could look like, what DeAndre Hopkins' financial situation is, and talk more about the situation where the Titans are as a team and why I don't think this makes a lot of sense. But if you're interested in making this move for Hopkins, then you'll want to know what the Titans could be looking at paying draft pick-wise and contract-wise to get Hopkins to Tennessee. So we're going to discuss that and more. Before we do, want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by the #1 sports book in America, our friends over at FanDuel. The tournament is heating up right now in March Madness. It's the best time of the season in the NBA, which makes it a perfect time to download the FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook. New customers can get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back, even if your first bet doesn't win. So download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, it's secure, it's super easy to use. You can bet the money line, the point spread, how many points a guy is going to score, how many threes a guy is going to make, how many rebounds a guy is going to get. One of my favorite things to do with an NBA game is combine all those things together for a single game parlay where you can bet a little for a much bigger payout. So don't miss your chance to get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Titans fans, we are going to continue today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. We just talked about why I wouldn't trade for DeAndre Hopkins and the report that the Titans are interested. Now I want to kind of get into the minutia a little bit more, talk about the contract details, talk about trade compensation, what that might look like. At the end of the show, we're going to talk about another player the Titans should just say no to, and that's Cam Newton, who worked out at Auburn's Pro Day on Tuesday. Before we continue the show, want to remind you guys, I appreciate you making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen every day, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content on all platforms all year long and always for free. Get subscribed, stay subscribed to the Locked On Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Also, it's my 32nd birthday, everybody. Let me know in the chat, little happy birthday action. I appreciate all you guys. Thank you. But what I would ask for you in return is to like the video if you're watching on YouTube, and go give the show a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. I don't ask for much. I don't ask for anything. Quite honestly, the show is free all year long. So in return, if you guys wouldn't mind for my birthday and to show some support, throw a thumbs up on the video, throw a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Even if that's not the podcast app that you listen to, go on there, give it a 5-star review. It helps out the show so much, man. And I can't tell you all how much I appreciate all your support here just all year round, but especially recently. You guys have just been absolutely amazing. So with that in mind, let's talk about trade compensation. So there's 2 deals that I want to reference for you when determining trade compensation. One was from last year. One just happened last week. So to me, Hopkins is a Hall of Famer. He's going to go to the Hall of Fame. He's one of the best wide receivers of my lifetime, period. But Hopkins only played 19 games in the last 2 seasons. PED suspension and injury issues. So when you think about that and you compare that to, let's say, an Amari Cooper, for example, who got traded last year to the Browns for a 5th-round pick. Amari Cooper, since 2019, 16 games, 16 games, 15 games, 17 games last year with Cleveland. That's different than Hopkins playing. I mean, Cooper played 17 games last year. Hopkins has played 19 in 2 years. You want to look at Brandon Cooks, for example, who just got traded last week for a 5th-round pick this year and a 6th-round pick next year. Cooks, last 4 years, 14 games, 15 games, 16 games, 13 games last year, but we know that he was holding out because of the Texans situation and looking to get traded. It wasn't, a major injury concern or anything like that. I know it was reported as such, but we know what the deal was with Cooks last year. He even said he was unhappy with the organization. So you look at guys in Cooks and Cooper who have been more productive, more available than DeAndre Hopkins the last 2 years. Even if we know that Hopkins is a Hall of Fame level player who is a better player in his peak than those guys, you can't deny the availability. Also, Cooks is a year younger than DeAndre Hopkins. So that's something that the Titans have to consider. And Amari Cooper is 2 years younger than DeAndre Hopkins. So if a guy in Amari Cooper got traded last year for a 5th-round pick who's more available, more productive, and younger than DeAndre Hopkins, then I'm sorry, but I'm not paying anything more than a 4th-round pick. I'd do a 4th-round pick and a 6th-round pick next year. Cook's got a 5th and a 6th. Okay, I'll do a 4th and a future 6th. Because if Hopkins plays his best ball, he does have higher potential than Brandon Cooks. So I could see Arizona not willing to do the deal that's the same as Brandon Cooks because of the pedigree of Hopkins. I get that. So I would do a 4th-round pick, and then I would do a 6th-round pick next year. I would do that for DeAndre Hopkins. If they want a 2nd-round pick, if they want a 3rd-round pick, absolutely not. Not a chance, man. The Titans, and I know some of you guys are hearing this too and having PTSD. I get the idea of, hey, they need more talent at wide receiver if they're trying to compete to win this year. And their signings don't really tell me that they're going all in to compete this year. These are stopgap, Band-Aid, 1-year signings with no future financial commitment so that the Titans can say that they tried to compete in 2023, but then they could go into 2024 with a completely blank slate, very little money on the books, draft capital, the ability to do whatever they please. That's what I think the Titans are really trying to do while selling that they're trying to compete. So when the roster is in that situation and when the Titans are in this situation, I don't think a move for Hopkins and paying draft capital and giving him money into the future would be a smart move, because now we get to the financial aspect of it. We talk draft capital. Now we talk financial aspect for the Titans. Look, this is not as bad of a situation as maybe some people would believe, or fans that talk on Twitter. If the Titans traded for DeAndre Hopkins, he would cost them $19 million this year on the salary cap, and then $15 million on the salary cap next year. But here's what you have to understand. The moment that the Titans traded for DeAndre Hopkins, they would rework his contract. He would not count $19 million towards the salary cap this year or $15 million towards the salary cap next year. The Titans would rework his contract. What they would do with it, they would give him fresh bonus money. They'd probably take $9 to $15 million of his salary and convert that to bonus money to give him more money up front, add some bonus money onto it as well, probably another $10 million in bonus money, maybe another $5 million, depending on, how much they want to take off the salary. And they would rework the contract so that Hopkins is less than $10 million on the cap this year, but changing salary into bonus money and reworking the contract would then push some money into the future. Now, I've said numerous times, and I'm going to keep preaching it, I would be okay with the Titans going with one big move this year. This is why I was okay with maybe signing Orlando Brown or going out and getting a wide receiver actually worth his salt, because the Titans are going to have like $100 to $120 million in cap space next year as things stand. So if they can keep the cap hit low in year one, they could easily, and with plenty of room to operate, have a guy with that kind of contract on their salary cap next year. They could easily do it. It would be easily workable. Chad Brinker would be all over that with his analytics model, okay? So I'm not worried about that. So financially, I'm not as scared off of Hopkins as maybe some people would be. Draft pick-wise, it is a little shaky, but if they got him for a fourth and a future sixth, that would be perfectly fine with me. But anything more expensive than that, anything more than $20 million, $25 million in guaranteed money, I'm just out. I'm just out on that. I'm just saying no, because again, 30-year-old wide receiver, played 19 games in the last 2 years, past his prime and past his peak, even though he's still a good player. I've seen this movie before for the Titans, and I'm not buying another ticket. So if you want to sell me a ticket for half off, sure, I'll go see the movie. That's a half off ticket. I can stomach that. But if I'm paying full price, I'll go see a different movie. Not interested. So that's how I feel. Just say no. I'm going to just say no again. Okay? When we talk about Cam Newton to close off our show, there's a small segment of people, I admit, that are asking me about this move, but I wanted to touch on it at least for a moment, just in case any of you have questions or wanted to know how I kind of view that move as well. Before we get into that, though, do want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by the Ultimate Pro Football GM app. Like I told you guys at the start of the show, an amazing game. It's challenging. It's realistic. You really get to manage your football franchise from the top down. Hiring and firing coaches, scouts, setting your team scheme, setting your depth chart, trades, draft, free agency, cutting players. I mean, everything you can do in real life, you're doing it in the Ultimate Pro Football GM app. My favorite thing was all the guys from Locked On and all the gals from Locked On got in a league against each other where we all had our own football franchise and we were competing to see who could run their team the best. It's the all season, guys. You want to pass time until next football season with all this draft and free agency stuff going on? Get your friends together in a league and try out the Ultimate Pro Football GM app. Right now, Locked On Titans listeners can get a 100% free boost to their franchise when you use the promo code Locked On inside the game store. That's Locked On in all caps. So make sure to check it out today. To download the game, you can go to ultimate-gm.com or do the easy thing. Just look it up on your app store. That's ultimate-gm.com, the ultimate pro football GM app. Start your dynasty today. Titans fans, we are going to cap off my birthday edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. We talked about DeAndre Hopkins. We went over just the report of the Titans being interested. We got into the details of trade compensation and how a contract rework might look for the Titans if they did it. At the end of the day, I am just saying no to DeAndre Hopkins. I've seen this movie before for the Titans. But we do need to finish the show off with a conversation about Cam Newton. I'm going to try to explain my comments in the nicest way possible. But before we get into that, I do want to thank you guys again for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen every day. Now for your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Scouting podcast with the draft dudes from free agency to the draft. They're going to talk about salary cap management. They're going to talk about roster construction so they can break down how to build a successful NFL franchise. The show is going to be every Monday through Friday. It's hosted by NFL experts Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino. Find Locked On NFL Scouting with the draft dudes wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As I said throughout the show, throw a thumbs up on the video. Go to Apple Podcasts. Give the show a 5-star review. The show's free all the time. I don't ask for much, and it's my birthday. So if you could do both of those things or either of those things for me, I would really appreciate it. But look, guys, Cam Newton is done. All right. Cam Newton did a pro day workout at Auburn's pro day on Tuesday. Number one, I find that just weird. It's a college pro day for college players who haven't got their opportunity to make it into the NFL yet, who haven't got the opportunity to make millions and millions and millions of dollars. I think it's selfish and classless for Cam Newton to suck up the oxygen at Auburn's pro day. But in my opinion, that's the kind of guy that Cam Newton is. He is a selfish, look at me, showy type guy. That's how he's always been. That's how he'll always be. I'm not a big fan of Cam Newton, and I think people that are wondering if he can be signed to the Titans are out of their minds. Ryan Tannehill is 10 times better of a quarterback than Cam Newton is right now today. Yeah, when Cam Newton was at the peak of his athletic powers in 2015, yeah, sure, he was way better than Ryan Tannehill is right now. Absolutely. But right now, today, it's not even close. It's really not even close. I mean, last time Cam played was 2021. He started 5 games. He went 0-5. 54% completion percentage. 4 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Took 10 sacks. I mean, I know Carolina wasn't a very good team that year, but even the year before that in New England, 15 starts. He went 7-8. 8 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 65% completion percentage. Guys, I know that Cam Newton is a name, an exciting player maybe to you, somebody who, gets the people going. But the dude can't play anymore. He was always a guy who lived off his athleticism. He never truly mastered all of the aspects of playing quarterback from the pocket. And now that the athleticism is going, as he's 33 years old, I mean, he didn't even play in the NFL last year. As the athleticism has left him, so hasn't any opportunity for him to be a starter in the NFL. So it just shows you that once your body starts to get older, you have to be able to win with your mechanics. You have to be able to win with your mind. And Cam Newton is not doing those things. He's just simply not. So one, I think it's absurd what he's done at Auburn's Pro Day. But two, it's over. Let it go. Titans aren't signing Cam Newton. It's not happening. Shouldn't happen. And I'd be shocked if anybody signs Cam Newton unless there's a serious injury issue. And last year, no one signed Cam Newton, even with the injuries and everything that happened. So let's just all collectively move on and not have to talk about that anymore. But with that being said, that's going to do it for me today, folks. Thank you guys all so much for tuning in. I am your host, Tyler Rowland, and this was Locked On Titans.